Okay.
Hello.
Good
Hello.
morning.
Hi.
Here we all are.
Oh,
Um,
Yeah.
morning here.
this is Mind to Mind, our
Mhm.
every other week program. I'm Dr. Dan Claiborn, and this is Evelyn Njeri. We're the co-hosts of this program, as you know. And today we have a guest, a friend of mine for over 50 years, Dr. Fred Breme, who is in Atlanta, Georgia, or not Atlanta, but in Georgia, in the United States. And we went to graduate school together and have both practiced all these years as psychologists. And we thought we might do our show today on hypnosis, which Dr. Breme has used extensively in his practice over the years. Um, Let me say another thing about our program. I think this is our 21st program. Is that right, Evelyn?
Yeah, and we decided to start another season. So this is officially the second season. So our
Right.
first episode, the second season, and we are so glad to be joined by our guest, Dr.
Uh,
Brim. Yeah. Am I pronouncing it right?
You're
yes.
correct.
All right. We're
I'll
so
go
Evelyn?
grateful.
by many variations of Bream, but you got it right.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Evelyn is a mental health specialist and an artist and a model and a musician and all sorts of other things. And she's the one that actually got the idea for our program in the beginning. And for myself, I've been writing an article on mental health for a local newspaper every other week for several years. And so many of our programs will be on a topic that I've written an article about. And so any viewers who want a copy of the article, um, please let us know and we'll be happy to provide that. Um, I haven't written anything on hypnosis, I don't think, but I studied it in graduate school and did some of it in my practice. But Dr. Breme, a very creative person, and has used hypnosis a lot. And so we thought we'd invite him as our guest today. And we'll be having more guests in the future programs too. So we're going to do that in our second season. Anyway, Fred, would you like to say a little bit about
Yeah.
yourself, your background?
Uh, yeah, I was born in Dover, Delaware, which is on the east coast of the United States. Uh, I went to the University of Delaware and got a master's degree and a bachelor's degree in psychology. And then I went on to the University of Missouri in Columbia and got my PhD in counseling psychology. I came down to Georgia, uh, 1977, I believe it was, and worked at the university for a number of years. And in doing the university work, I received some training, just a brief training kind of thing in hypnosis, and came back to the Counseling and Testing Center where I was both teaching and seeing clients. And we meaning myself and another friend who went to this workshop with me, decided to offer a self-hypnosis workshop. And we figured nobody would come. Well, much to our surprise, we had lines down the hallway and out into the public areas. more interest in hypnosis than we had uh, thought would be. Anyway, I started learning more hypnosis and using hypnosis extensively in my practice at the University of Georgia as well as my private practice. And I don't know if you want to know any more from me or not. There's always room for questions.
One interesting thing about Fred is that he wrote his doctoral dissertation on humor, and
Wow.
which
Well,
fits well because Fred and I have always really shared a sense of humor, and it was fun to see him do a dissertation on that topic.
yeah. Yeah, it's unfortunately it wasn't a very funny dissertation. Uh, it's hard to write a dissertation that's funny. Although I did have a couple of jokes I threw in, and you know,
I wonder if it'd be possible to do a dissertation just in cartoon drawings instead of
oh,
text.
that would be nice. Yeah, yeah, I'd have to take up the cartoon trade. So
Well,
anyway, go ahead, Dan.
I was just going to say, maybe to start with, just from your experience and learning, what is hypnosis exactly? I don't know whether we all have the same idea of what it might be.
Well, I don't think there's a consistent definition of hypnosis. Um, some people define it as a state of relaxation and focused attention. But it seems to me that it's much more complicated than that. But that's a good starting place. There is usually a state of relaxation that comes with the initiation of hypnosis, and the focused attention or concentration starts right at the beginning of the hypnosis, where you're going into a trance and then receiving suggestions, which are just that. They're just suggestions. A lot of people think that it's, I can just bend their mind any way I want to, and that they'll do it, and that's certainly not the case. So I offer people suggestions, and they have to figure out in their mind, what I often call the unconscious mind, whether that suits them or not. And if it does, then they'll take the suggestion and go with it. So is that a long, drawn out kind of discussion on what it is? I've never been able to answer that question to my satisfaction, quite frankly.
Right. One thing I sometimes say when people have asked that question is that we've all experienced different types of consciousness. For example, if I'm driving my car down the highway, I might be so preoccupied with something I'm thinking that I don't even see where I should turn off, and I keep driving. Sometimes athletes, when they're jogging or doing that kind of a repetitive sport, they'll not be aware of anything else around them except what they're doing. So I think in a natural way, we all have a kind of a very flexible consciousness. Sometimes it's very alert to everything, and other times it's more narrow and focused on one particular thing to the exclusion of other things. So it's our consciousness, I think, is very flexible and adaptive. And in hypnosis, the hypnotist helps the person mold their attention to whatever the purpose is that day between the two of them, and try to help them focus it. And it definitely involves relaxation usually. Although some people say they can enter a kind of an altered state of consciousness when they're the opposite of relaxation, like let's say like jogging or swimming. Anyway, so that's just sometimes, it is a very tricky question. And that's the example I sometimes use.
Well, it's true that we have, go ahead.
I think I've had some really curious questions about hypnosis, especially when I find like some of my past memories. I can't remember some sections of my past, like especially it's like I blocked out some sections of my past. Is it possible for hypnosis to help me remember such memories? And another thing is that, like, what happens to the conscious to your mind when it starts blocking out some sections of your memory?
Well, let's see where to start. Yeah, well, very basically, our mind is kind of going in, our conscious thinking is very linear. In other words, we think one thing and then another and then another and another. Our unconscious mind is doing all kinds of things all at the same time, and we're not aware of them. For instance, if you are walking down the street and you come to a curb and you step up, you don't have to consciously tell your foot to lift and move forward and so forth. So probably most of our life is done on the unconscious level. Now, that means that we have a huge resource of skills and information stored in our mind. Sometimes it's easily accessible. Other times we kind of have to fiddle and do things to kind of get our unconscious mind to work with us. Personally, I have a kind of a personal relationship with my unconscious mind. I haven't named it. I need to name it. But anyway, I've learned to respect that part of me. And I ask that part of me to remember things or to help me solve a problem or to even change sometimes physiological states. So hypnosis helps a person establish a relationship between the conscious thinking or conscious mind and the unconscious mind, which is doing all kinds of things all the time and you're not aware of them.
Yeah.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, that is so interesting because I've always wondered, like, how do I have a relationship with my subconscious mind? Because sometimes my conscious mind will make me think that I'm okay, but my subconscious mind is processing all these things that are going on in my life that maybe my conscious mind is blocking out. Then after a while, maybe I have ulcers, or there's some now my physical body is telling me that there's something wrong that is going on, that I have been stressed, or maybe I am burnt out by maybe a lot of work or something, but my conscious mind is aware of it. It means that I don't have a relationship with my subconscious mind to tell me that this is going on, or my conscious mind is blocking out what is really going on in my life because I really want to. Maybe I'm trying to hold on and maybe stay strong for a certain period of time. So how do I have a relationship with my conscious mind, my subconscious mind?
Well, that's kind of what learning hypnosis is all about. There's a particular kind of language that we use in hypnosis that helps us access memories, helps us go deeper into hypnosis sometimes, where we can access memories that are very difficult. So if something terrible happened to us as a child, we may be blocking it actually mostly at the unconscious level. And so in hypnosis, it feels safer to deal with difficult issues and to resolve them so that those experiences you had in your past are not affecting you in your day-to-day life.
You know, one problem that I've run into with hypnosis is in hypnosis, people can recover a memory or a feeling or something from the past, but there's no way of really knowing if it's accurate or real. And so a number of probably 2 or 3 decades ago, it was very fashionable for people to go into hypnosis to try to recover unconscious memories of childhood sexual abuse or something like that. And sometimes during that process, clients would remember things very vividly, but sometimes they were accurate and truthful, but other times they might not be. And so what seemed to be a very reliable process turned out to be much more complicated. Just because you have a memory from the past that's very vivid and like a dream doesn't mean that it actually really happened. So but a lot of people do seek hypnosis to try to clarify something from their past that seems to be bothering them, or they remember part of it, but not all of it. I've had several cases, and probably, Fred, you've had many more, of people who have lost something, like their car keys or their wedding ring or something like that. And they want to use hypnosis to see if it can help them retrace their steps and find it, the thing they lost. And I've had situations where it did work and it did help them remember where that item was lost. But I've had other cases where they just, they couldn't come up with anything that helped at all. So actually, Fred, you might want to talk about just a case or two that, just a situation where somebody came with a particular desire for hypnosis and kind of how you proceeded with it and what they experienced.
Well, you're talking about people losing things, and the funniest one of those I had was a bank teller called from a local bank, and they couldn't get into their vault because they couldn't remember the combination to the lock. So I gathered up myself and was just getting in the car, and I got a call saying they had found somebody who had it written down, so I didn't have to do it. But that's kind of, what that points out is that people think of hypnosis in a certain way. And, so now I got off track. What was your question, Dan?
Well, actually, that leads me to think, what are some things that hypnosis could reliably be used for? And are there some things that requests that you might have gotten where it's not appropriate? It wouldn't. I just think of a case where I had a man who wanted me to hypnotize him so that I could prove to his wife that he wasn't having an affair. And I had to say to him at the beginning, I don't really think hypnosis will help us in that process. Yeah. But anyway, what are good purposes and not so good purposes that you've
I have to shift a little bit here because I'm holding my phone and my hand is getting very tired, so I need to make it cataleptic. Anyway, I lost track there. Send a quick version of that question.
What are some topics that reliably really would fall under something that hypnosis could be valuable for?
Well, hypnosis is used in a variety of ways. It's used by dentists for pain control. It's used by physicians to help with pain or to help with a difficult procedure that is painful. And also there's been some hypnotic work on using hypnosis to help in the healing process from certain diseases like cancer. I think the jury's out on that still, but that's been studied. Mostly, I think, you're not going to see too many dentists who know hypnosis, and you're not going to see too many physicians who know it and use it. You have to dig around for that. But there are many applications. So the doctors and the dentists and so forth, and psychiatry and psychology all use those things. And you can just kind of, people ask me, what can you use hypnosis for? And for me, it's like, what can't you use hypnosis for? You can use it in so many ways. You just have to have a little bit of creativity to fit the hypnosis to the person's personality and the issues involved with the problem. So it can be medical, and it could be dental, or it could be psychiatric kind of things. That's kind of a general answer.
I think one of the most common things I used to get requests for would be habit control, like people who wanted to stop smoking or lose weight.
Yes.
Those are the two that I probably ran into the very most. And
Yes.
I found it to be a lot of times very helpful in those cases. Particularly, a lot of it depended on the motivation of the person. Almost any technique will work if somebody's really motivated. And
Yeah.
hypnosis
They've got to want it. Yeah.
Was helpful with those habit kinds of things.
Yes.
Sometimes I got requests for people who wanted to remember something. That's true.
Learning how to focus when they're studying, that type of thing. They could go into a trance while you're reading a book and you're in a state of mind where you're receptive to new information. That type of thing is good.
Oh, you know what that you made me think of, Fred, is maybe you could give an example of kind of how you help a person go into a trance.
Yeah.
What is that like?
That would be
well, there are various ways. There are standardized ways, which are kind of the first ways that people use hypnosis and induction, and then there are more modern ways called Ericksonian hypnosis. So, for instance, if we use Ericksonian, you may be looking at the screen, and if you just stare at the screen, you don't have to pay attention to anything else. Just staring at the screen and listening to the sounds and noticing what you're hearing and what you're smelling and tasting. And that's a brief kind of way of starting a hypnotic trance to kind of get a person to focus on what they're experiencing. Other ways of doing hypnosis would be techniques with what you do with your eyes and how you use your breathing. There's a technique called eye roll, and it's not at all like jelly roll, but it's where you just, what you do is you roll your eyes up as far in the back of your head as you can, and then bring your eyelids down only, and then bring the eyelids all the way down. And that enhances the initiation of hypnosis. There are some other things you can do for yourself. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just thinking, a lot of the techniques, whatever they may be, it seem to involve relaxation and also kind of letting yourself do what the hypnotist suggests. So whatever it is, if you allow yourself to relax and kind of go with whatever the hypnotist is suggesting, you're already then helping yourself go into a hypnotic state. Some people can go very deeply, of course, and some people just a little bit, and that's individual differences. But
yeah, there's a wide variation on skills with hypnosis. So people often ask, "Can I be hypnotized?" And I usually say, most likely, because you go into a hypnotic state many times a day. You know, like if you're reading a book or that kind of thing. So that kind of helps a person understand a little bit about focusing of attention. And then, you know, the other thing I'll say to people is people who are more intelligent and have a higher vocabulary are more easily hypnotized. And that serves two purposes, of course. One is that it kind of sets up the client to want to be smart, and the other is that it kind of educates the person about what hypnosis is all about. It's really, hypnosis in many ways is just a form of communication. So, you know, you can go in a hypnotic state during a boring lecture, like, I hope not this one, but some lectures you know, where, you're just kind of dozing off or going off into, what your date is going to be like tonight and that kind of thing. And then you realize the class is over. You missed it all.
Right.
It's probably somewhere in there.
Right. If you see somebody doing hypnosis for entertainment, it looks as though the hypnotist has control over the person. But our view of it really is that the person has to be giving their permission to go along with it and cooperate with it. And in our practice of psychology, by the person coming to be a client and wanting the treatment, they're in a way, right up front, giving their consent to cooperate with this process. So it may look like the hypnotist is guiding and directing and kind of controlling the patient, and that's a little bit true. But it's more the person's ability to go into the trance and experience what the hypnotist is asking them to do really depends on the willingness and the ability of the client. You can't really make this a controversy in hypnosis, can you? Oh,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Evelyn, you want to continue? You want to continue with that trance you're in?
Oh my Lord.
Yeah, we'll let you know when the show is.
How did you catch that?
Well, yeah. Well, it's you can kind of recognize it when you see it. So very good anyway. It was very good.
Oh.
Evelyn is an artist and a musician, and I sometimes have found that people who are artistic have a better ability to go into a trance. Not always, but sometimes.
Yeah, that is so true.
Yeah.
You were talking about like going to a trance, maybe like during a lecture or I don't know, my mind has the ability to create situations and items and sometimes even creating dreams that are not real, but my mind tends it's real.
Yes.
Yeah. Sometimes I will wake up of a dream that I had, which wasn't real, but it takes a while for me to realize it wasn't. Like my conscious mind knows it wasn't real, but I'm going to be in that emotional state of mind like for a very long time during that day. I have to now like sit down with myself and tell myself like, hey, you that is not true. It didn't happen. This is not real. Because I don't know, for some weird reason, like the mind doesn't differentiate between dreams and reality. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you already have a relationship with your unconscious mind because you're talking to yourself. You're asking yourself to do certain things or to change how you're thinking about a dream. And the dream is a very complex expression of the unconscious mind and issues that you're dealing with. And they can be very distressing, but they sometimes, if you learn how to look at dreams and understand them, I guess that would be another one of these things we could do. Then that's the relationship. Understanding it when you're experiencing it, learning how to give yourself suggestions, which is I have to talk to myself and tell myself certain things, like we all do.
Yeah.
That's a type of hypnosis. It's really easy. Everybody knows. So we just build on that, essentially.
It seems to me, Fred, that you've talked to me about a couple of cases where you were even surprised at how quickly the person benefited from a hypnosis session. And can you remember one of those that, to give an example?
Yes. I worked with a college student. He was a graduate student in veterinary medicine, and he had started to block on all of his material. He couldn't remember things like he used to be able to. And he had final exams coming up, and it was going to have a big effect on his career and his life. And he couldn't remember anything that he needed to. So in working with him, I did a standard approach of induction, but it was straightforward. Once he was in the hypnotic state, I asked his unconscious mind if he would be willing to work with the conscious mind on this problem. And I got a signal, which I had set up beforehand, that the unconscious mind was ready to do that. It would do it. And I said, well, would you be able to have this problem solved before so-and-so's final exam? And I got a signal saying yes. And that was it. Now, he kind of left the session scratching his head, but I heard from him a week or so before the exams were to be had, and he said everything had cleared up. He had a clear mind. He was having better memory, and he was feeling much more confident about what was coming up in his educational career. So now, that's so simple, and yet it was a fairly complicated process, I'm sure, for his unconscious mind to settle out. So that was a pretty fast one.
Yeah.
I've also had some surprises in hypnosis. Sometimes it's fast. Sometimes I have no clue as to what's going on in the mind of the subject. But as long as there's a trance there, and I can recognize it like I did with Evan, then I can use that to, even if we're not doing hypnosis per se, I can use that state of mind that's visible and recognize it as a type of trance and change the kind of language I'm using into a more suggestive or suggestible type. Suggestive might bring up the wrong connotation there. But, and so sometimes it's pretty easy. Other times it takes weeks. Now, I had a client once who took a session of a self-hypnosis group, one of those early ones, and she called me after her first session and told me that her hand was moving. And I said, well, which hand is it? And she said, it's my right hand. And I said, you're right-handed? Yes. I said, close your eyes. When this happens again, when you start feeling this weird feeling, have a pad and a paper, close your eyes, and put your hand on the pad with the pen and just see what happens. Well, I had a session with her a couple or 3 days later, and it was startling that she could write things out from her unconscious mind about being terribly tormented as a child by her family. And when she wrote in session, she would write upside down and backwards. And she also developed the capacity to write with her left hand and her right hand at the same time. So it was one of the most interesting cases I ever had. But she benefited.
It seems like when you're making suggestions of any kind, it almost implies to the person that something is possible.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe in a certain way it kind of releases them to be
yes.
more creative or expressive. Because if you were to suggest something, if it were impossible, and so therefore it must be possible.
Yeah. Is it possible to put yourself in a trance?
It is.
in a
And
in a hypnotic state.
it is. And some people say that hypnosis, and I gotta get comfortable here, hypnosis is always self-hypnosis. That, we're using the words, but the person is cooperating or not. And so if they're cooperating, then they're putting themselves in a hypnotic state, basically. But you can learn to do this on your own. So if you know how to get into a hypnotic state with some basic kinds of induction and deepening techniques, then you can learn how to develop useful post-hypnotic suggestions. And there's some things pretty simple that you can learn to do that. Then you can put yourself into a hypnotic state and work on your problems on your own. My experience has been that there's a little bit more success with hypnosis if you meet with somebody who's trained, and that brings up a point here. You shouldn't go to anybody for hypnosis unless they have already achieved a terminal degree. In other words, if a person has a master's degree or a doctoral degree or a medical degree, then they get training on top of all of that, so that they work more effectively within the bounds of their practice, and that's why the person is coming to see them anyway. So, gosh, I went off on another tangent.
I think that's a good point, though. If a person is licensed and they have completed a training program, they also then are bound by a certain ethics code, and that protects you as a patient going into having any kind of treatment with them.
What are the dangers of having by someone who is not licensed?
I didn't say that again, Evelyn.
What are the dangers of having hypnosis by someone who is not licensed, or maybe someone who doesn't have the right intentions? Like, what's the worst thing that can happen?
Well, depends on how you define the worst thing. It may not work, for one thing, because they don't have a significant amount of training to do the trance induction and the post-hypnotic suggestions. The worst kinds of things that can happen is one would wake up. That's not a good word to use in hypnosis, but you kind of open your eyes and say, well, I think I have a cup of coffee, and that was that. So I've never seen or heard anybody that I've worked with that used self-hypnosis that had a bad experience. Because you're basically working with yourself and your own unconscious mind. So, people have a lot of beliefs about hypnosis, and let me just kind of dispel some of those. Some people feel that they'll lose control when they're in hypnosis. And that's not uncommon. I tell people that what you're doing in hypnosis is you're actually learning control, and that they're afraid they're going to go to sleep and not come out of the hypnotic trance. And I tell everybody wakes up, particularly with self-hypnosis. But I've had some people who didn't want to come out of hypnosis because it was so pleasant. But let's see, some people don't believe in it at all. They think it's just hocus pocus, and that it's not a valid type of tool to use in their practice, or the doctor's practice. But that's hypnosis has been studied for a very long time. Hypnosis has been around for millennia. Dan and I were talking about this yesterday, that hypnosis in a different form probably has been used in ancient times or even modern times by the healers in certain cultures. Shaman that kind of person. We have several ministers in this area who know about hypnosis, and so they use it. But you know, it's not hocus pocus unless you kind of make it into a stage show. And believe me, if you go to a stage hypnosis show, you're not seeing much hypnosis. Everything is kind of set up in such a way that a person's going to do what the so-called hypnotist is telling them to do. And it looks funny, and everybody's competing to get up on stage and make a fool of themselves. So, you know, that then becomes an area that we kind of frown upon, this misuse of hypnosis, and promotes a idea about hypnosis that isn't true. Let me see. What if I can't experience hypnosis? I don't know if I talked about this a few minutes ago or not, but everybody can experience some form of hypnosis. People have varying degrees of talent with regard to going into the trance and using it. So it's up to the therapist to figure out how to use what the client or patient has in their own way, so that it's not just kind of like shooting a shotgun. You know, it's more refined. Can the hypnotist make me do things that I don't want to do? This is another concern people have. And that's basically, if you're going to a trained person, that's not true. And basically, it's not true anyway. Your unconscious mind is going to take care of you. And you only do things that you really think are to your behalf, on your behalf. So, you know, another thing would be, I talked about that. Let me see. Oh, some people are concerned that if they go into a hypnotic state, it empties the mind, and evil thoughts can fill the mind, the empty mind. And this comes up primarily with people who have religious beliefs about the devil entering the mind and so forth. So that I've never seen anybody come out looking like a devil, but they've never experienced that with me. And generally speaking, it's not. You're in control in hypnosis, whether you feel like it or not. You can come out of it anytime you want. I tell everybody that. They can decide to cooperate on certain things I'm asking them to do. One way that might come about is that I ask them to sometimes signal me with their fingers or with a pendulum as to whether their unconscious mind answers yes or no. And you know, that's a pretty interesting way of doing some self-hypnosis. If you find that you can do that, and you find that you can actually get some useful information from your unconscious mind, and you get a signal from your unconscious mind that it's cooperating or it would like to do something that you're asking it to do, that's rewarding. But I forgot to mention that was another.
A good example of your unconscious mind protecting you is, let's say you're driving your car down the highway and you're thinking about other things, and you are in a state of mind where you might miss your turnoff. But then an animal or an accident occurs in front of you. Immediately, your attention will come back, and you'll take over and stop the car. So you might miss your turnoff, but you won't miss something that could be dangerous. And in that way, there's a part of your mind that is looking out for you.
Yeah. I have a few fun things that I'd like us to do. So when it comes to hypnosis, we've had various movies act out different scenarios about hypnosis. And I had some questions that I wanted us to see whether, is it true or was it just fiction?
Okay.
Okay, so one of the scenarios that I watched in a series called The Monk is actually pretty old. Is that there was this episode where him and one of his a guy he used to compete with were put into a trance by a therapist, and they underwent hypnosis, and the therapist put them in a state where they were most happy. So one of them turned out into a teenager and they were acting out like a teenager. And the other one was like a 6-year-old boy. And these are 50-year-old men acting like a 6-year-old boy. So can that happen in reality, or was it just fiction?
Yes.
Well, yeah, I think some people can do that.
Yeah, yeah. Generally, when they come to see us, they don't.
Uh-huh.
People can get into all kinds of states of mind. You know, drama students that I saw used hypnosis as a way of getting into a state of mind that matched up with the part they were playing in a play. And that's kind of what was going on, I think, in the movie you're looking at. And again, you know, if a person wants to follow a hypnotic suggestion, they will. So this was set up in such a way that there were probably a lot of things wrong with how it was presented, because hypnosis is presented incorrectly most of the time.
Sorry, these were men who had a lot of phobias and fears, so they were pretty much living their lives with so much fear. But they Mr. Monk himself wanted to live like a few days feeling different, and one of the reasons he went to the hypnosis is because he realized a guy he used to compete himself with was happy, enjoyed the clouds, and there was a rainbow and all that, and he couldn't understand it. So now he felt that he wanted to go through it, and he was in that like an entire day. So is it possible for you to get into maybe like a happy memory and stay in that state of mind for a long period of time, like for a day or let's say a few days?
Well, Dan, you got a comment there?
I would say yes, it's possible. I mean,
Yeah.
some people are so gifted at shifting back and forth between their conscious state and their unconscious, and they really enjoy it and get into it quickly. And I would say that may be possible. Usually hypnotic trances wear off, even if you don't, if the hypnotist doesn't bring the person out of it, eventually it will wear off.
Yeah.
And another question that sometimes comes up is, under hypnosis, can you get somebody to do something terrible
That they don't want to,
that they don't want it, they would normally not do, like something, expose themselves or shoot another person, and I think the general feeling, see what Fred thinks, but in the field is that you can't. But
correct.
Is that what you think, Fred?
Yes. Basically the unconscious mind is capable of doing a lot of things, but it also keeps you safe, at least in their viewpoint, safe, and it keeps you from doing things that you would suffer negative consequences from.
Wow. What were your other ideas there, Evelyn?
You pretty much answered it. Another scene that I watched was, there was this therapist who was doing like an online survey where people had to apply to be in, like, to go through therapy from her. But what she was doing is that she was making them go through a certain test to test whether they are capable of killing, or gone through certain traumas in their lives and all that, so that now they're more prone to her manipulating them during hypnosis to commit murder on her behalf. And she managed to do that with several people. And it was actually one of those murder mystery series where now the detectives were trying to find out who did this. Because now when the detectives get to the person like really doesn't have any idea they did anything wrong. And even when they go through the polygraph, like they are, like they are telling the truth. But in the true sense is that they were doing that in a sense of now they're hypnotized to do it. And there was a trigger of now you're in that state, and then it like snaps out of it. So they're not aware of what they did in that state. So does that happen, or can that happen?
I think there's some movies a long time ago, wish I could remember the names, where the character was hypnotized and groomed to be an assassin. And I can't remember the name of, was it the something syndrome or something? I don't know. But that sounded a little to me more like Hollywood than really reality. In our practice, people come to be helped.
Yeah.
And so they're generally motivated to do something that's actually constructive and healing and positive. So I don't think I've ever had someone that wanted to use hypnosis to do any kind of damage or something destructive.
Yeah.
Before we have to stop, I was going to ask Fred.
Let me comment on that briefly. It's a rule of thumb for me that if I see hypnosis on TV, it's probably going to do it wrong, unless somebody in directing the program knows what they're doing. But there's always something that's weird or screwy about how they do it. But they do it for the dramatic effect, and unfortunately, that leads to beliefs about hypnosis that aren't true.
Oh, that's right.
Entertaining though. Yeah.
And that's the reason as to why I actually brought it up, because sometimes you will learn that most people, especially when you don't have enough knowledge about something, you will create a notion that something is real and maybe it's not. And that's why I had to really ask those questions, because I'm like, you'll find that people have different myths and misconceptions about certain things, and hypnosis is one of them. Like if you will ask some people if they don't know about hypnosis, they'll tell you, oh, it's voodoo, it's witchcraft, it's it's all sort of thing. And you have to create awareness and actually remove the stigma around certain things by creating addressing some of these issues.
Right.
And
I think that goes back to what Fred was saying in the beginning about if you have an issue that you want to use hypnosis for, it's finding a reputable, qualified person to do it. And that would be true of any therapy. You want to go to someone who really is qualified and has training to do whatever it is to address whatever the issue is for you. I was going to ask Fred, can you think of any other unusual experiences you've had when you've been treating somebody with hypnosis that was helpful, or you used a technique that was a little experimental?
Gosh, what do you mean by experimental? Seems to me that
were you creative?
Every time I do hypnosis, it's different. So I'm using my creative mind, and hoping I link up with what a person has experienced in their life, and that's why it's good to get to know somebody before you do hypnosis. So you can use things that a person is familiar with to focus their attention and develop the sensory experiences needed to get into a trance. I've had some folks that have surprised me. The woman who could write both ways and backwards at the same time. That was a surprise. I had another client once who we had done hypnosis in the sessions before, and he looked like he wanted to go into a trance or was in a trance when he came in for his session. So I did with him kind of like what I just did with Evelyn a few minutes ago. You know, would you like to continue with that trance that you're in? And he immediately went into trance, and I gave him some general kinds of suggestions to work on the problem. And all of a sudden, he leaped off of the sofa and flopped down on the floor and shook like he was having a seizure. And so, you know, it was kind of like, okay, Fred, this is new. What are you going to do with this one? But, you know, what I told him was, you know, when you're done doing that work that you're doing right now, you can stop and get back up on the sofa. So he continued in his flopping around for maybe a minute, and then he stopped and got up on the sofa and looked at me. He said, "What the hell was that?" So we had a few sessions. I couldn't answer it though. I didn't, you know, but we had a few sessions to work on or to work with after the experiences he had. But you know, he wasn't upset by it at all. He was surprised by it, as was I.
You know, you mentioned dreams earlier, and sometimes a technique we can use is to have the person imagine they're having a dream about their problem. And then after they do that for a number of minutes, you can suggest, okay, now you can wake up and remember the dream and we can talk about how that related to the problem that you're having. And because all people know what dreams are, everyone's had them. So it gives somebody something kind of familiar, but yet it takes them out of their normal way of being conscious into a different form, one that they're familiar with. And then they know they can wake up and come back. Fred, and I have to brag about Fred a bit because he's one of the most creative, playful therapists in general. And I'm sure that has really helped his use of hypnosis, because you have to fit any treatment or therapy or hypnosis around the personality of the person. And some therapists are just much better at sensing what that person's personality is and is capable of. And Fred is definitely one of those people, and is playful and willing to experiment and try something different, and which communicates to the client, this is a process where you can try something different and outside of your normal patterns. Anyway, what about you, Evelyn? Any other questions that come to your mind?
Can you use hypnosis to bury a memory that you don't want to ever remember?
Success with that. And I use a simple metaphor of a person having a closet full of boxes and that kind of thing, and have them place the memory in a container and tape it shut and put it in the back of the closet. And that often works for people. They'll just say, "I don't know where it is anymore. It's gone."
Yeah,
but I always give them a chance. You know, I tell them that they can take the box out if they want to. Most of them don't.
Yeah. Well, this has been fascinating. We could probably go for another hour, but it looks like our time is up.
Yeah.
And my hand is tired.
Yes, holding your phone. Thanks a lot, Fred, for we really appreciate it.
Oh, I enjoyed it.
Much.
I hope everybody else did.
Enlightening. And maybe I can tell you guys not to log out. I'm just going to end the live, but don't log out. We can have like a quick meeting, and then we can all say goodbye. Is that okay?
Okay.
All right. Thank you guys for watching. This has been amazing. If you have any questions for us, you can type it in the comment section. We are live on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter. And yeah, if you have any questions for us, if you have any suggestions for the next episode, feel free to ask. Feel free to suggest, and we are open to your suggestions. Thank you once again for watching. My name is Evelyn Njeri.
And Dan Claiborn.
Uh-huh.
And Fred Breme.
Yes. And we will
Bye-bye.
see you
Have
in
a
2
nice
weeks.
day.
Yes.